how real is this? I mean, Can-Am's 16 years old. What's your track history? I mean, how many people have received a green card? How many people got their money back? Did anyone lose money?
All right, this has been the biggest hurdle when you're entering a new market. As I said, 4 years ago, we had 5 investors in India. And the reason is because people hear this and they automatically think scam. Okay, I know, I've been with Can-Am for 4 years now. Okay, when I first had a recruiter come to me to talking about this, I originally thought, like, I've never heard of this program, and I'm in the U.S., and I said, well, this sounds like a Nigerian prince who wants me to wire him money to get him out. So initially I said to the recruiter, like, I don't want to talk to you. Like, what is this? After doing research, found out that it is a legitimate program. And so to brag a little bit about our company, and granted, I can brag about it because I'm not responsible for most of this success. A lot of it was started well before I started there. But we've raised almost $3 billion now in EB5 capital. We're on our 56th project. We have almost 4,000 investors who've gotten a conditional green card, over 2,000 that have a permanent green card, and close to 2,000, 1,700 investors that have been fully repaid. Now, the reason why there are different numbers is not because projects have failed, it's because of the timeline, right? 2 years for your conditional green card, another 2+ years to get your permanent green card, and then 5 years for repayment. So this year we'll hit $1 billion in repayments. So this is a real industry. EB5 is an established program. I happen to work for Can-Am, which we have by far the most repayments in the industry, just to brag a little more. We've repaid $870 million. The rest of the EB5 program has repaid about $400 million altogether. So we've had 32 projects repaid and 56 where we've gotten approvals. So this is a formula, right? EB5 has become a formula if it's done the right way. Now there could still be, obviously, the securities part. There's still risk involved. No one's money is guaranteed. But in terms of immigration, we have a tried and true formula that's worked over and over again, both with the government and in terms of repayment.
One of the slides which says you can get your repayment in 2 years versus what I'm hearing is like it's 5 years.
Right.
It's actually 5 years or 2 years? I mean, you get your money back in 5 years, right?
So the money has to be at risk until you get your permanent green card. So the loan is structured as a 5-year loan, and as long as you have your permanent green card at that 5 years, you'll get your money back. If it takes longer to get your permanent green card because of processing times, it might take longer to get your money back. But you cannot get your money back after 2 years because then you'd be in violation of the program. So you wouldn't get your green card. So we don't let our borrowers repay early unless everyone has their green card.
Just repeating what you said, which was it's close to around 4% is what you get as an interest, and 3.75 is kept with the regional center, and 0.25 is what is given. So it's 0.25 per year?
Yes.
It's 0.25 per year, but guess what? You have to pay taxes out of that, and there's a little bit of expenses. Basically, you should count on making no money. This is, and I've said this a million times, you care about immigration, 1, safety of capital, 2, and then number 30 is return on investment. There's a lot of other things to worry about if it's done right. In fact, and I didn't say this before, I don't know of any EB5 project that's offered an interest rate, that has paid investors an interest rate, that's ever repaid. I don't believe it exists.
Last question for me, which is the money which you invest, that's around $500,000 to $1 million. What's the fee which Can-Am would take on top of that? Is there a fee
Fee
involved in that?
varies per project, and it depends on the project that you invest in. And can you share the?
Yeah, I mean, all regional centers charge what's called an administrative fee, and it's usually somewhere between 40 and 60, probably more, $50,000 and $60,000 on top of it. So when you look at how much this is going to cost you, and I hate to talk about lawyer fees here, but the $500,000 investment, which should come back to you, right, assuming the project's successful. What you won't get back is the administrative fee, figure $50,000, and the attorney fee, which is, I don't know, somewhere around 20, whatever. I don't want to name your rates, but 40, somewhere in that. So about $570,000, 70 of which is not going to come back to you, and hopefully 500
And this
will.
fee is given right in the beginning itself, of course. at the time of
Everything is
applying.
due, yes, in the beginning before you file your application.
Since the project is based in New York, the investment is $500,000.
Again, there's a few. So to have it as 500,000 and not a million, it has to be in a targeted employment area. And how you achieve a targeted employment area, there's 3 different ways. Now, New York is clearly not a rural area. There's not a lot of farms and stuff in Manhattan, but one of the ways that you can do it is you can combine census tracts. So every 10 years, they take logistics and stuff, the U.S. Census Bureau, and you can use that data, or it's actually every year, sorry, for unemployment. And if you combine census tracts together to give you a national, 150% of the national average, that will qualify. There's a variety of reasons, but in New York, in Manhattan specifically, that census tract by itself is not high unemployment. But there are enough census tracts around it, and if you think about it, that's where the workers are usually coming from. They're commuting into the city. That's what lets you lower or raise the unemployment rate and keep the investment lower to 500,000 rather than a million.
So point of clarification, it's not the city, but the census tract.
Overall.
Right.
Yeah, so the west side of Manhattan is recently developed. It's not like Midtown, like the main Manhattan area. This is the Hudson Yards area, and it's like new developments are coming up, new buildings are coming up. That's why a combination of census tracts has led to high unemployment. Thereby, it's a targeted employment area.
So given the uncertainty of the United States immigration policies, are you for sure that the EB-5 is going to be sticking around, or how is that all going to play out, do you feel?
Well, one thing is the EB-5 program in general has tremendous bipartisan support. But there's a lot of bickering about it. But the bickering is not about whether or not it's a worthwhile program, but about who gets to use it. So that rural versus city, everyone here live in India. If I told you I have a project in Idaho or a project in New York City, you're going to say, I want the project in New York City, right? Because you don't know anything about Idaho. So these rural states are fighting for more EB-5 money to come that way, and the big cities want to keep it. So you'll find most of the projects in EB-5 are directed towards the big cities. So you have senators and congressmen from those states fighting about how to allocate these green cards. But in general, it has tremendous support. Being part of the complex overhaul of immigration, I mean.
So just to talk about support for this program, we have annual EB-5 Investors magazine conferences. The last one was attended by Ted Cruz. He was there. The previous one by Jeff Flake. So there's a tremendous senator support for this program. They're Republican senators. They're Trump's team. Trump's own son is involved with EB-5. That's a different issue. He's under investigation, and he cannot raise funds under EB-5. So there is tremendous support for this. There are no talks of canceling this program, but there are talks of increasing the investment amount, because this is a 27-year-old program. The investment amount has remained same ever since it started. Now, there are different arguments and calculations that people are using, taking into account inflation. So one proposal says 800,000 minimum investment, other says 925, and Department of Homeland Security says, yes, let's make it permanent, but let's increase the amount from 500,000 to 1.3 million. As absurd as it may sound, but I mean, to your point, yes, there is certainty around the program in general, but not around the investment amount.
There's two, we mentioned there's direct and there's regional center EB-5. Actually, the direct side is permanent. We're only talking about the regional center side that's got this sort of temporariness to it. But if the legislation changes, it'll probably change for both sides.
One elementary question, can the investment, either part or full, be made on behalf of the applicant by somebody else?
Well, I think Abby answered this earlier. I think you were pretty clear. The government is really clear that it must be your funds. So there's some ways to sort of manipulate this a little bit, but at the end of the day, it must be your funds.
I mean, it has to be gifted. It has to be in the possession of the primary investor at some point in the chain, right before it goes to the regional center. So you can get a gift from your siblings and invest that money. These siblings can be in US, they can be in Canada, they can give you gifts there, and you can invest that money for EB-5.
It could just be an account. So for example, if you had a kid in India, you could have an account for the name of the child in United States, and you could directly fund that account. So it doesn't have to, but it's got to be the kids' money.
Yeah.
I was just going to add to that and say, regardless of if the gift is coming to the investor themselves, if you already have the money but you want someone else to transfer it on your behalf, there's a couple of mechanisms to do that, but you have to
Right.
document it very clearly,
Right.
because like Abhi said, the whole idea is that it's your money to spend, but you can give someone else permission to get around remittance limits,
Right,
basically,
right,
to be able to transfer it to the United States.
My question is that once you get a temporary green card, and the kids below 21 also get it,
Right.
so for the education, are they subject to the fees as charged for the U.S. residents, or
U.S. residents.
okay, then
Yeah.
fall in that bracket?
That's right. They'll not be international students.
Right. Thank you.
The money allowed to go out of India is $250,000
That's right.
versus $500,000 you need to invest.
Mm-hmm.
Now, how does one, I mean, and also you said that it has to come from one account or one person.
It doesn't have to come from one account. It has to come from one investor or be in the possession of that investor.
Okay.
That said, you can have it documented in a way that spouse is sending money on behalf of another spouse, or
Okay.
children that have PAN card are sending funds for their parents.
So it can be multiple people contributing
right,
to a
that's right.
500,000.
Back in 2014, when I used to file these cases, the remittance limit was 75,000. We needed 6 people.
Yeah. To put it in perspective,
Yeah.
China has a remittance limit of 50,000. So you often need to use 10 or 12 family and friends to
Yeah.
send your money. So it's feasible. You just need to document it correctly. And I think the big step is making sure the money is pooled in the investor's account first, and then sent to the people who are essentially intermediaries for the investment abroad.
If somebody is there in US already on a H1, can he get transferred to EB5?
Absolutely. So
Increasingly.
so this is actually a big chunk of the work that I do is we have H1 individuals who are in the United States, Indian nationals, who are on an H1 visa. And the H1 visa is actually a dual intent, which means that even though it isn't a non-immigrant, you can still file an immigrant visa without any repercussions. And so essentially, yeah, you can have an I-140, you can have an EB2 approval. So you have your green card approval for a different category, and you can still file a 526 for the EB5 category, and essentially just wait for that to get approved, and then go that route for the green card. And we have there's a lot of individuals, and there's a lot of interest in people
Right.
who have green card approvals, but it takes anywhere from 10 to 15 years to get some of those green cards. So they're willing to do the EB5 program to get it in 2 years, which is a lot less.
Right.
Yeah, so the H-1B, I said earlier, you just said, is a very, very popular thing for H-1B people to do right now, to apply for EB-5. Why? Because maybe it's paranoia, maybe it's not. People are scared about the longevity of the H-1B program and their ability to use it. So they're running to EB-5 to secure their future in the United States.